My name is Michele Casolary, and I started in EMS in '96. Got hired right away full-time as an EMT. Loved it. It was in a small town. There was only 2 ambulances. I worked in Hollister. So I was working full-time for a few years, went to paramedic school. Well, still continued to work full-time as an EMT, went to medic school, did my internship, and then became a medic in 2000 and stayed working in Hollister as a full-time medic till about 2010 when I transferred over to Monterey, where I currently work now. Okay, so me and my partner, we were working Soledad, and we just got into town after dropping off a patient at the hospital, and a call came out for a semi rollover. And that's going to be one patient. And so we took the call, we showed up, and it was not a semi. We got out, it was a bus. It was on its side, and as we're walking towards this bus, I see tons of people screaming. They're all covered in blood.
It happened just before 3:30 this afternoon on 101 just north of Soledad on the Front Street overpass. It was quickly declared a mass casualty incident. Responders came from all over Monterey County.
And I was like, for a minute, I was like, this has to be like the training that they give you in school. Like, there's no way that this is happening. And so it was just me and my partner. There was no fire yet because we were right there when we got this call. It was pretty overwhelming, but I knew eventually another ambulance was coming, fire was coming.
A massive emergency response was launched, both air and ground, Tuesday afternoon, just minutes after the tour bus crashed. It happened on the Front Street 101 overpass in Soledad, killing several people aboard the bus.
It was a gruesome scene, something many of the firefighters and paramedics had never seen in their careers. Some of their descriptions too graphic to describe.
And I'm walking to all these people, and I remember seeing a couple people with, like, their faces were scraped off from the cement. I could see bodies just laying down, and everyone was walking towards us that could walk, and they didn't speak any English. They all spoke French. And then I remember seeing this girl looking down, screaming for her mother down over the bridge. So I knew there had to be more people down under this bridge, but I couldn't go down there. I sent the next ambulance to go down there. And she was like 12 or 13, and I remember seeing her mother just laying down there, and I knew she was probably dead.
Soledad resident Lorena Salinas was one of the first witnesses on scene, driving into town on Front Street.
There was blood everywhere, but there was clothes on the hanging, coming down and everything. That's all you can see.
That's when she saw 3 victims who'd been ejected from the overpass down onto Front Street. All adults, only one was moving. Above her on the overpass, Selena says she saw a teenage girl yelling for her mother.
My eyes got all watery because I seen that girl yelling for her mom. All I could hear is saying, "Mama, Mama," and screaming.
So while we're waiting, me and my partner, we did grab the triage tags, and I remember doing that, and a CHP officer was the first one to show up, and I had him help me get the walking wounded, because we had to separate these people. There was just too many. There was 36 people, and so he helped, and he was able to get the walking wounded to one section while we were waiting for helicopters and more ambulances. There was one lady, only one person inside that bus, and her arm, I remember her arm was amputated. I remember a guy laying, he was cut in half. And so it was pretty overwhelming. But then finally, you know, other ambulances showed up, helicopters were showing up, fire was showing up. And then I remember standing with all these people and someone was grabbing my pants. I felt someone tugging on my pants. And I looked down and this guy, his stomach was split open, everything was hanging out. And I remember, so I knelt down and I remember he like rubbed my face. He just was looking at me and he rubbed my face. And I remember his name was, he was 26, he had blonde hair. I'll never forget the blue t-shirt that he had on. And I knew I couldn't help him. I mean, I knew I could only do so much, but there was no time. I mean, every patient was put in C-spine. There was no time to start IVs. There was no time for any of that stuff. Just load the patient and they were off. I just remember looking at him and knowing that he was going to die. And I mean, he did when he flew out. When he got to the hospital, he died. But I just felt like there was nothing I could do.
Many people who first arrived on scene are being heralded for their actions tonight. In fact, their quick action is being credited with helping save lives.
Our live team coverage continues now with Action News reporter Felix Cortez, who's also in Soledad tonight.
Well, Dan, Aaron, one paramedic described the scene as a nightmare, but for most of the emergency crews who responded to this accident, it was the worst they've ever seen. One paramedic described the scene as a nightmare. She was too emotionally distraught to finish her shift and went home.
And then, well, the whole call lasted for probably about an hour and a half. And after it was over, I remember me and my partner got in the back of the ambulance and we just like, wow, that was pretty horrible. And then didn't finish my shift, of course, went home.
Now the counseling and debriefing begins for her colleagues. And they take care of their firefighters by providing them counseling and debriefing, and that's what will happen tomorrow morning here at the Soledad Fire Station.
In the old days, we just went home and had nightmares and you dealt with it, but we don't do that anymore. We really do take care of our people. And
I didn't go to the debriefing because they had one, but I had to go to mandatory training. So they made me go to this mandatory training instead of the debriefing, which was wrong. But then I thought I was fine. I mean, I was sad, but like I didn't cry. And so I thought I was fine. But then I didn't go to counseling. I didn't go to the debriefing because I had to go to that training. Still never spoke to any counselor or anything because part of me thought, well, they aren't going to understand what I saw, you know. How are they going to help me if they weren't there? How are they going to understand that? But because I didn't talk about it enough, I kept feeling something built up. And then, so I didn't sleep for a couple weeks, the nightmares. Was able to talk to my husband. I mean, I'm fortunate that he's also a paramedic, so he was able to listen. But I felt weird. I felt like, for the first time, I felt like there was something bottled up inside. And then, you know, I was talking to another medic on the phone every once in a while because she was also on that call, so she knew exactly, you know, how I felt. She felt the same way. But then I know she was in counseling and she had suggested, hey, if you need to talk to my counselor. But I think just talking to her actually was very helpful because we were both there. I mean, she was one of the second units in. And so she was there, you know, and we chatted a few times. There was stuff that bothered her, you know, of another patient, and so I knew exactly what she was talking about. at night, I was having trouble sleeping. For the next couple of weeks, I remember being woken up because of these nightmares. And it was always that face, that one patient's face. I mean, I could see him. I was dreaming about the bus, the bridge that the bus was driving over. So for weeks, I just kept having these awful nightmares. And the nightmares weren't about all the other people. It was that one particular patient that bothered me. I just felt like I was supposed to help him, but all I could do was cover his stomach and get him in the helicopter. But he didn't even speak, but just the way he looked at me. And then I just remember the one day me and my husband were watching a movie, and I don't remember what movie it was, but the movie was sad. And at the end of that movie, something triggered me, and I just cried. I mean, it was like this, I've never cried so hard in my life. It was almost like I was releasing this built up sadness. And so I cried, I talked to him even, more about the story and what was bothering me, and I felt so much better after that. Then my nightmares stopped. I think about it all the time. I mean, it's been 8 years, and I still think about the call. Every time I see a bus, I think about the call, but I don't have nightmares anymore. And so, yeah, I think I should have talked about it more. I think I should have cried more. I think I should have not let it build up. But, I mean, that's all I could say is calls that I've been on since that affect me. Yes. Since then, yes. Now I talk about it. Now I don't, I talk to my husband about it, my partner. If they offered support, yes, I would have taken it. I like my job. I do. Because there's still, there are, not every call is bad. There's, it's a lot of good calls. A lot of people, patients will say thank you. Family members, thank you. So yes, I still like my job. I would advise talk about it, because don't bottle it up like I did and then realize later, once you let it out and you're crying or whatever, that it actually is a good thing. It is a good thing to talk about it. And I know that now. I know not to hold everything in. Years and years of going on bad calls and just not really talking about it is not healthy. It's not.